The vast wilderness of America's national parks stretches across millions of acres of pristine landscapes that promise adventure, solitude, and connection with nature. But beneath the breathtaking beauty of these protected lands lies a darker reality that park officials rarely discuss in their promotional materials or safety briefings. Every year, hundreds of people enter our national parks and simply vanish without a trace, leaving behind families desperate for answers and search teams baffled by disappearances that defy logical explanation. These aren't typical cases of hikers getting lost or injured in remote areas where rescue teams eventually locate them alive or deceased after systematic searches of probable locations. These are cases where experienced outdoorsmen, families with children, and even large groups of people disappear so completely that no trace of their presence can be found, despite extensive search efforts involving thousands of volunteers, professional rescue teams, and advanced technology. The National Park Service maintains detailed records of missing persons cases, but the patterns and circumstances surrounding these disappearances reveal disturbing consistencies that suggest something far more sinister than simple wilderness accidents or navigation errors. People vanish from well-marked trails in broad daylight. Experienced hikers disappear from areas they know intimately, and children wander away from their families and are never seen again despite massive search efforts. My name is David Paulides, and I've spent over a decade investigating these mysterious disappearances as part of my Missing 411 research, documenting cases that share unusual characteristics and occur in locations where conventional explanations fail to account for the complete absence of evidence that should exist when people go missing in wilderness environments. Ever wondered why some missing persons cases in national parks receive minimal media coverage? Ever questioned why certain wilderness areas seem to have unusually high rates of unexplained disappearances? Share this video if you've ever felt uneasy while hiking alone in remote areas and sensed that something wasn't right about the wilderness around you. Because tonight, I'm sharing 7 of the most disturbing cases that will make you reconsider everything you thought you knew about national park safety. These aren't stories designed to discourage people from enjoying our national parks, but real cases that demand serious investigation and consideration of possibilities that extend beyond conventional search and rescue protocols. If you've ever experienced unexplained phenomena during wilderness activities or wondered about the true dangers that might exist in our most pristine natural environments, then you need to hear these cases. 6-year-old Dennis Lloyd Martin disappeared on June 14, 1969, during a family camping trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, vanishing in broad daylight while playing a simple game of hide-and-seek with his father and grandfather near their campsite at Spence Field. The Martin family had been enjoying a peaceful Father's Day weekend in one of America's most visited national parks, participating in the kind of wholesome outdoor activities that millions of families experience safely every year. Dennis was an active, healthy child who was familiar with outdoor activities and had been camping with his family on multiple previous occasions without incident. On the day of his disappearance, Dennis was wearing a bright red t-shirt that should have made him easily visible against the green forest backdrop, and he was playing within sight of multiple family members. The hide-and-seek game that led to Dennis's disappearance was a spontaneous family activity that began when Dennis's father and grandfather decided to entertain the children by hiding behind trees and calling out to create a playful atmosphere around their campsite. Dennis was excited to participate and ran toward a nearby cluster of trees to find his own hiding spot. Dennis's father maintained visual contact with his son as the boy moved toward the trees. But within moments of entering the forest area, Dennis simply vanished from sight, despite the fact that the terrain was relatively open and the vegetation was not dense enough to completely conceal a 6-year-old child wearing bright red clothing. Comment below if you've ever lost sight of a child in the wilderness for even a moment, because what happened next in Dennis' case proved that some disappearances in national parks defy every logical explanation and challenge everything we understand about search and rescue operations in wilderness environments. When Dennis failed to respond to his father's calls and could not be located in the immediate vicinity of the campsite, the family began a more systematic search of the surrounding area, calling Dennis's name and checking every possible location where a young child might have wandered or become stuck while playing. The Martin family's report of Dennis's disappearance triggered one of the largest search operations in National Park Service history, involving over 400 searchers, including park rangers, military personnel, volunteers, and specialized rescue teams who conducted systematic searches of over 56 square miles of wilderness terrain. Despite the massive search effort and the involvement of experienced wilderness rescue professionals, no trace of Dennis Martin was ever found. The search teams discovered no clothing, footprints, or any other evidence that would indicate the direction Dennis had traveled or what might have happened to him after he entered the forest area. The complete absence of evidence was particularly puzzling given Dennis's young age and the fact that a 6-year-old child would not typically be able to travel far from the disappearance location without leaving some trace of his passage. Several witnesses reported unusual sightings and sounds in the area around the time of Dennis's disappearance, including reports of a man carrying something large and covered in the forest near the Martin campsite. Dennis Martin's disappearance remains unsolved over 50 years later, and his case has become one of the most studied examples of mysterious vanishings in national parks. The complete absence of evidence and the failure of massive search efforts to locate any trace of the missing child continue to baffle investigators. But if you think Dennis's case represents the most baffling type of national park disappearance, wait until you hear what happened to Stacey Ann Arras in Yosemite. Because sometimes the most disturbing vanishings involve people who disappear while engaged in routine activities under the direct observation of multiple witnesses, leaving behind only questions about what forces might be operating in our wilderness areas that can make people vanish without a trace. 14-year-old Stacey Ann Arras vanished on July 25, 1981, while on a horseback riding trip with her father and a group of other riders in Yosemite National Park's backcountry, disappearing without a trace during what should have been a routine recreational activity in one of America's most carefully monitored wilderness areas. Stacey was an experienced young rider who had been participating in horseback activities for several years and was comfortable with outdoor recreation and wilderness environments. The horseback riding group was following established trails in the Sunrise Lakes area of Yosemite, traveling through terrain that was familiar to the guides and considered safe for recreational riders. On the morning of her disappearance, Stacey was riding near the back of the group with her father, maintaining visual contact with other riders and following the established trail system. During a rest stop at Sunrise Lakes, Stacey asked her father for permission to take photographs of the scenic area, a normal request that was consistent with the recreational nature of their trip. Stacey walked approximately 200 yards from the rest stop location to photograph the lake and surrounding landscape, remaining visible to her father and other members of the riding group as she moved through the open terrain near the water's edge. The area where Stacey was taking photographs was relatively flat and open, with good visibility and no obvious hazards. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you've ever been photographing in a wilderness area and felt like you were being watched, because what happened to Stacey in those final moments proves that some national park disappearances occur under circumstances that challenge our understanding of what's possible in wilderness environments. Within minutes of reaching her photography location, Stacey Ann Arras simply vanished from sight, despite being observed by multiple witnesses who were maintaining visual contact with her activities. Stacey's father and other members of the riding group immediately noticed her disappearance and began calling her name while moving toward the location where she had been taking photographs. The riding group's immediate search of the area where Stacey had been photographing revealed no trace of the missing teenager, despite the open terrain and the short time period that had elapsed since she was last seen. Stacey's camera was found at the location where she had been taking photographs, but there was no sign of Stacey herself. The discovery of Stacey's camera at the photography location was particularly puzzling because it suggested that she had been present at that specific spot, but had then vanished without taking her equipment or leaving any footprints or other evidence of her departure. The camera contained photographs that Stacy had taken during the trip, confirming that she had been at the location. Despite extensive search efforts involving park rangers, search and rescue teams, and volunteer searchers who conducted systematic searches of thousands of acres of wilderness terrain, no trace of Stacy Ann Aris was ever found beyond her camera at the photography location. The complete absence of evidence in Stacy's case was particularly baffling given the open terrain where she disappeared, and the immediate response of witnesses who began searching for her within minutes of her disappearance. The investigation revealed no logical explanation for how a 14-year-old girl could vanish so completely from an open area while under the observation of multiple witnesses. Stacy Ann Aris's disappearance remains unsolved over 40 years later, and her case has become one of the most studied examples of mysterious vanishings in Yosemite National Park. The circumstances of her disappearance, particularly the discovery of her camera at the location where she was last seen, continue to puzzle investigators. But even cases involving individuals vanishing under direct observation seem manageable compared to what happened to Glenn and Bessie Hyde in the Grand Canyon. Because sometimes the most terrifying national park mysteries involve experienced outdoorsmen who disappear along with their equipment, leaving behind only questions about what dangers might exist in our wilderness areas that can overcome even the most prepared and capable adventurers. Glenn and Bessie Hyde disappeared in November 1928 during an ambitious attempt to navigate the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon, vanishing without a trace, despite being experienced river travelers who were attempting to set a record for the fastest traverse of the dangerous rapids that had already claimed numerous lives. Glenn Hyde was an experienced outdoorsman and river guide who had successfully navigated challenging waterways throughout the western United States, while his wife Bessie was an adventurous woman who had accompanied Glenn on previous river expeditions. The couple had carefully planned their expedition and were using a specially constructed wooden boat designed to handle the challenging conditions. The Hyde's river expedition began in Green River, Utah, with the goal of traveling through the Grand Canyon and completing their journey at Needles, California, a route that would take them through some of the most dangerous whitewater rapids in North America. The couple was attempting to complete the journey in record time while establishing Bessie as the first woman to successfully navigate the entire Colorado River system. On November 18, 1928, Glenn and Bessie Hyde were photographed at Hermit Rapids by Emery Kolb, a photographer and river guide who operated a studio at the Grand Canyon. The photographs showed the couple in good condition with their boat and equipment intact, and they expressed confidence about completing their journey successfully. The photographs taken by Emery Kolb were the last confirmed sighting of Glenn and Bessie Hyde alive. The couple continued their journey down the Colorado River after the photography session, but they never reached their intended destination, and no trace of them was found, despite extensive search efforts. Hit that like button if you've ever wondered what happened to experienced adventurers who simply vanished from well-documented expeditions. Because the discovery of the Hyde's boat created one of the most enduring mysteries in Grand Canyon history that continues to baffle investigators decades later. The search for Glenn and Bessie Hyde involved river rescue teams, park rangers, and experienced river guides who conducted systematic searches of the river corridor and surrounding canyon areas. Despite extensive efforts, no trace of the couple was found until their boat was discovered floating upright and undamaged in an eddy near Diamond Creek. The discovery of the boat was puzzling because it showed no signs of damage or distress that would explain why the couple had abandoned it or what had happened to them after leaving the vessel. The boat contained the couple's personal belongings, including Bessie's diary, which documented their journey up to the point of their disappearance, but provided no clues about what had happened. The discovery of the intact boat with the couple's belongings, but no sign of Glenn and Bessie themselves, created one of the most enduring mysteries in Grand Canyon history. The absence of any evidence of struggle, accident, or distress made it impossible to determine what had happened to the experienced river travelers. Over the decades following their disappearance, numerous theories have been proposed to explain what happened to Glenn and Bessie Hyde, but none have been supported by credible evidence. and the case remains unsolved. The disappearance continues to fascinate researchers and has become one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in National Park Service history. But even experienced adventurers vanishing with their equipment seems manageable compared to what happened to Keith Reinhard near Rocky Mountain National Park. Because sometimes the most disturbing disappearances involve people with advanced survival skills and military training who vanish from areas where their expertise should have made them virtually invulnerable to conventional wilderness dangers. Keith Reinhard, a 54-year-old experienced outdoorsman and former Green Beret, vanished on July 9, 1988, while staying at a cabin near Silver Plume, Colorado, in an area adjacent to Rocky Mountain National Park, where he had been conducting personal research and enjoying solitary outdoor activities. Keith's disappearance was particularly puzzling because of his advanced survival skills and military background. Keith had traveled to Colorado to spend time alone in the wilderness while working on personal projects and enjoying outdoor recreation opportunities. His military training and wilderness experience made him well prepared for solo outdoor activities, and he had successfully completed numerous wilderness expeditions throughout his life. On the evening before his disappearance, Keith had dinner with friends at a local restaurant in Silver Plume, where he appeared to be in good health and spirits and discussed his plans for hiking and outdoor activities. Keith's friends noted that he seemed relaxed and enthusiastic about his wilderness activities. Keith returned to his cabin after dinner and was expected to continue his wilderness activities the following day, but when friends attempted to contact him the next evening, they discovered that he had not returned to the cabin and that his vehicle was still parked at the property. The initial search for Keith Reinhard involved local law enforcement, search and rescue teams, and volunteers who conducted systematic searches of hiking trails, wilderness areas, and other locations where Keith had been conducting his outdoor activities. Despite Keith's extensive wilderness experience and survival training, the search teams found no trace of him. Ring that notification bell if you've ever wondered how someone with advanced military survival training could vanish without a trace from familiar wilderness terrain, because Keith's disappearance proves that even the most prepared and capable outdoorsmen can encounter dangers in our national parks that overcome their skills and experience. The search for Keith expanded to include larger areas of wilderness terrain and involved specialized search and rescue resources, including helicopters, tracking dogs, and teams of experienced wilderness rescue professionals. The expanded search efforts covered thousands of acres of challenging mountain terrain. Despite extensive search efforts involving highly trained professionals, no trace of Keith Reinhard was ever found. The search teams discovered no equipment, clothing, or any other evidence that would provide clues about Keith's fate or the circumstances of his disappearance. The investigation revealed no evidence of foul play or circumstances that would explain why an experienced outdoorsman with advanced survival skills would vanish so completely from familiar wilderness terrain. Keith's military background made it highly unlikely that he would have succumbed to normal outdoor hazards. Several unusual aspects of Keith's disappearance have continued to puzzle investigators, including reports of strange sounds and lights in the wilderness areas where he was believed to have been hiking, and the complete absence of any evidence, despite his extensive outdoor experience. Keith Reinhard's disappearance remains unsolved over 30 years later, and his case has become one of the most studied examples of missing persons cases involving experienced outdoorsmen who vanish without a trace from wilderness areas where their skills should have enabled them to survive. But even military-trained outdoorsmen vanishing from familiar terrain seems manageable compared to what happened to Alfred Beilharz at Rocky Mountain National Park. Because sometimes the most chilling disappearances involve young children who vanish from crowded areas in broad daylight, surrounded by witnesses who should have made it impossible for anyone to disappear unnoticed. 4-year-old Alfred Beilharz disappeared on July 2, 1938, while on a family picnic at Rocky Mountain National Park, vanishing in broad daylight from a crowded recreational area where dozens of other families were enjoying holiday activities during the busy 4th of July weekend when the park was filled with visitors. The Bailharts family had traveled from Denver to spend the holiday weekend camping and enjoying outdoor recreation at Rocky Mountain National Park. Alfred was a healthy, active 4-year-old who was accustomed to outdoor activities and had been camping with his family on previous occasions. On the day of his disappearance, the family was enjoying a picnic lunch at a popular recreational area near the Big Thompson River, where numerous other families were also participating in holiday activities and where the presence of many people provided natural supervision and security for children playing in the area. Alfred's parents were maintaining visual contact with their son as he played with other children in the open area near their picnic site. But during a brief moment when their attention was directed toward other family activities, Alfred simply vanished from the recreational area despite the presence of numerous witnesses. The Bailharts family's immediate search for Alfred began within minutes of noticing his absence, and their search efforts were quickly joined by other families and park visitors who were present at the recreational site. The initial search involved dozens of people who conducted systematic searches of all logical locations where a 4-year-old child might have wandered. Despite the immediate response and the involvement of numerous searchers, no trace of Alfred could be found in the immediate vicinity or in the surrounding terrain that would have been accessible to a young child. The absence of any evidence of Alfred's departure was particularly puzzling given the open terrain and numerous witnesses. The report of Alfred's disappearance triggered one of the largest search operations in Rocky Mountain National Park history, involving park rangers, local law enforcement, military personnel, and hundreds of volunteers who conducted systematic searches of vast areas of wilderness terrain. The search effort included specialized teams with tracking dogs and helicopters. The search for Alfred continued for weeks and expanded to cover over 1,000 square miles of wilderness terrain, making it one of the most extensive missing persons searches ever conducted in a national park setting. The search teams included some of the most experienced wilderness rescue professionals available. Despite the massive search effort involving hundreds of searchers using advanced techniques and technology, no trace of Alfred Bailharts was ever found. The search teams discovered no clothing, footprints, or any other evidence that would indicate what direction Alfred had traveled or what might have happened to him. The complete absence of evidence in Alfred's case was particularly baffling given his young age and the fact that a 4-year-old child would not typically be able to travel far from the disappearance location without leaving some trace of his passage or becoming visible to search teams. Alfred Bailharts' disappearance remains unsolved over 80 years later, and his case has become one of the most studied examples of mysterious vanishings involving young children in national parks. The circumstances of his disappearance from a crowded recreational area continue to puzzle investigators. But even young children vanishing from crowded areas seems manageable compared to what happened to Trenny Gibson in the Great Smoky Mountains. Because sometimes the most disturbing cases involve responsible teenagers who disappear from supervised school groups during educational activities, proving that even the most controlled and monitored wilderness experiences can't prevent certain types of mysterious vanishings. 16-year-old Trenny Lynn Gibson vanished on October 8, 1976, while on a school field trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, disappearing from a group of students and teachers who were participating in an educational outdoor program that had been conducted safely with thousands of students over many years. Trenny was a responsible, intelligent high school student who was participating in the field trip as part of her school's outdoor education program, which was designed to provide students with hands-on learning experiences while maintaining strict safety protocols and adult supervision. Trenny was known for her maturity and reliability. The school field trip involved a group of students and teachers hiking on established trails in the Cataract Falls area, following routes that were well-marked and regularly used for educational programs. The group was maintaining proper spacing and communication protocols that should have ensured the safety of all participants. On the day of her disappearance, Trenny was hiking with her classmates and teachers on a trail that led to Cataract Falls, a popular destination for school groups. The weather conditions were favorable, and the group was making good progress toward their educational destination. During the hike, the student group stopped for a rest break at a scenic overlook, where students were allowed to take photographs and enjoy the mountain views while remaining under the supervision of their teachers and chaperones. Trenny was present during the rest break and was observed by teachers and classmates. When the group prepared to resume their hike after the rest break, teachers conducted a head count to ensure that all students were present and accounted for before continuing toward Cataract Falls. During this head count, teachers discovered that Trenny Gibson was missing from the group despite having been present just minutes earlier. The teachers' immediate search for Trenny began within minutes of discovering her absence, and their search efforts were quickly expanded to include other members of the hiking party. The initial search involved systematic coverage of all logical areas where Trenny might have wandered during the rest break. Despite the immediate response and the involvement of teachers and students who were familiar with the area, no trace of Trenny could be found in the vicinity of the rest stop or along the trail system that the group had been following. The absence of any evidence of Trenny's departure was particularly puzzling given the established trail system. The report of Trenny's disappearance triggered an extensive search operation involving park rangers, search and rescue teams, and hundreds of volunteers who conducted systematic searches of thousands of acres of wilderness terrain. The search effort included helicopters, tracking dogs, and specialized teams. Despite extensive search efforts involving experienced wilderness rescue professionals, no trace of Trenny Gibson was ever found. The search teams discovered no clothing, personal belongings, or any other evidence that would indicate what direction Trenny had traveled or what might have happened to her. The complete absence of evidence in Trenny's case was particularly baffling, given that she had disappeared from a supervised group during a routine educational activity on well-established trails. The investigation revealed no logical explanation for how a responsible 16-year-old student could vanish so completely from a supervised group. Trenny Gibson's disappearance remains unsolved over 40 years later, and her case has become one of the most studied examples of mysterious vanishings involving supervised groups in national parks. The circumstances of her disappearance from a school field trip continue to puzzle investigators. But even supervised teenagers vanishing from educational groups seems manageable compared to what happened to Dior Kunz Jr. near Yellowstone, because sometimes the most heartbreaking and inexplicable cases involve toddlers who disappear from small contained camping areas while under the direct supervision of multiple family members, proving that even the most careful and attentive supervision can't prevent certain types of mysterious vanishings. 2-year-old Dior Kunz Jr. disappeared on July 10, 2015, while on a family camping trip to Timber Creek Campground in Idaho, an area near Yellowstone National Park, where the family had been enjoying what should have been a safe routine outdoor recreation experience, with multiple adult supervisors maintaining watch over the young child. The Kunz family had traveled to Timber Creek Campground for a weekend camping trip that included Dior's parents, his great-grandfather, and a family friend, providing multiple adults who were responsible for supervising the young child during outdoor activities. Dior was a healthy, active 2-year-old who was accustomed to outdoor activities. On the day of his disappearance, the family was enjoying typical camping activities at their campsite, with Dior playing under the supervision of multiple adults who were maintaining visual contact with the child while participating in normal camping routines. The campground was small and contained only a few other camping parties. According to family members, Dior was playing near the campsite, while his father and great-grandfather were engaged in fishing activities at a nearby creek, and his mother was organizing camping supplies. The adults reported that they were maintaining awareness of Dior's location and activities. During a brief period when the adults were focused on their individual activities, Dior simply vanished from the campsite area, despite the presence of multiple supervisors who should have noticed immediately if the child had wandered away from the safe camping area. The family's initial search for Dior involved systematic coverage of the small campground area and the immediate surrounding terrain, including the creek area where fishing activities had been taking place. The search efforts were joined by other campers who were present at the campground. Despite the immediate response and the involvement of multiple searchers who were familiar with the area, No trace of Dior could be found in the campground or in the surrounding terrain that would have been accessible to a young child during the short time period since his disappearance. The report of Dior's disappearance triggered one of the most extensive search operations in Idaho history, involving hundreds of searchers, including law enforcement personnel, search and rescue teams, volunteers, and specialized units with advanced search technology. The search effort covered thousands of acres of wilderness terrain. The search for Dior involved multiple agencies and continued for weeks, utilizing helicopters, tracking dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and other advanced search technologies that should have been capable of locating any trace of a missing child in the search area. Despite the massive search effort and the involvement of highly trained search professionals using advanced technology, no trace of Dior Kunz Jr. was ever found. The search teams discovered no clothing, toys, or any other evidence that would provide clues about Dior's fate or the circumstances of his disappearance. The investigation into Dior's disappearance has continued for over 8 years and has involved extensive interviews with family members, analysis of the campground area, and investigation of all possible scenarios that might explain how a 2-year-old child could vanish so completely from a supervised camping environment. Dior Kunz Jr. His disappearance remains an active missing persons case, and the investigation continues to seek answers about what happened to the young child during the family camping trip. The case has become one of the most studied examples of mysterious disappearances involving young children in wilderness camping environments. These 7 cases represent some of the most disturbing and unexplained disappearances from America's national parks, each involving circumstances that challenge conventional understanding of missing persons cases and search and rescue operations in wilderness environments. Dennis Martin's vanishing during a family game of hide-and-seek, Stacey Ann Arris's disappearance while photographing scenic landscapes, Glenn and Bessie Hyde's mysterious fate during their river expedition, Keith Reinhardt's vanishing despite his advanced survival skills, Alfred Beilhartz's disappearance from a crowded recreational area, Trenny Gibson's vanishing from a supervised school group, and Dior Kunz Jr.'s disappearance from a family campground all share common characteristics that distinguish them from typical wilderness accidents. These cases involve the complete absence of evidence despite extensive search efforts, the failure of advanced search technologies to locate any trace of the missing persons, and circumstances that defy logical explanation based on conventional understanding of human behavior and wilderness survival. The patterns and consistencies among these cases suggest that our national parks may harbor dangers that are not addressed by current safety protocols, and that the wilderness areas we trust for recreation and spiritual renewal may contain threats that challenge everything we think we know about the natural world. The most chilling aspect of these disappearances isn't just the individual tragedies themselves. It's the realization that they represent a pattern of vanishings that occurs regularly in our most protected and monitored wilderness areas, suggesting that forces we don't understand are operating in environments we consider safe and predictable. Dennis had no warning that a simple game of hide-and-seek would lead to his complete disappearance, despite massive search efforts involving over 1,400 searchers. Stacey had no indication that photographing scenic landscapes would result in her vanishing while under direct observation of multiple witnesses. Glenn and Bessie had no clue that their carefully planned river expedition would end with their mysterious disappearance, leaving behind only their intact boat and unanswered questions. Keith had no idea that his military training and survival skills would prove inadequate against whatever forces caused his complete vanishing from familiar terrain. Alfred had no understanding that playing in a crowded recreational area during a busy holiday weekend would lead to his disappearance, despite the presence of dozens of witnesses and immediate search efforts. Trenny had no warning that participating in a supervised school field trip would result in her vanishing from an established trail system. Dior had no comprehension that playing at a family campground under the supervision of multiple adults would lead to his disappearance and one of the most extensive search operations in Idaho history. If you're currently planning visits to national parks, especially for activities in remote areas or during times when fewer people are present, if you've experienced unexplained phenomena during wilderness activities, or if you've felt uneasy while hiking alone in remote areas, trust your instincts. And remember that maintaining awareness could be the difference between a safe wilderness experience and becoming another unsolved missing persons case. The next time you visit a national park, remember these cases and consider that the greatest dangers in our protected wilderness areas may not be the ones listed in park safety brochures, but rather the unknown threats that have been claiming victims for decades, while leaving behind no evidence of their presence or their methods. Before you go, check out the playlist in the description for more missing 411 cases that could save your life. Because in the end, the most important thing you can pack for any wilderness adventure is awareness of the unexplained dangers that may exist in environments we think we understand completely. Comment below if these cases have made you reconsider what you thought you knew about national park safety, and remember that the wilderness that calls to our souls for adventure and solitude may also harbor mysteries that challenge our understanding of what's possible in the natural world we think we know so well. Stay safe out there, and remember that our national parks should remain places of wonder and recreation, but awareness of their unexplained dangers may be the key to ensuring that your wilderness adventures don't become another chapter in the ongoing mystery of people who vanish without a trace from America's most beautiful and protected landscapes.